Tom Lavecchia here with a special live edition of the Armchair MBA. Unfortunately, this topic is not going to be as jovial or a turnaround story that we like to usually unpack and cover. Today, we're going to be discussing the Texas school shooting. Before I introduce our esteemed guest, just want to give some background and color as to what happened for those most of you probably know, but just to give some background. The attacker, Salvador Ramos, he first shot his grandmother. She was in her mid 60s in the face at their, I guess you could pronounce it, Uvalde home. Then from there, he took her truck and drove to local school. And then from there, crashed the truck outside the school, got out with a rifle and approached a back door. There seemed to be an officer assigned to the school that engaged Ramos. I don't know what exactly that means. We'll talk about that a little bit. But unfortunately, he got in the building, down a hallway, and into a fourth grade classroom. This hits home for me. I have a son in fourth grade. After locking the door, opened fire around 11:30 a.m. with an AR-15 style rifle carrying multiple magazines. So my guest today is Dr. Bart Rossi, who is a board certified clinical psychologist, initially from New Jersey, now by way of Florida. Had multiple offices, a very successful career. Also an Emmy winner. He's been on the show before. As an Emmy winner, and also could talk about the political climate. And he's actually a political psychologist, so he can kind of cover the clinical aspect and also some of the other aspects as well. Dr. Bart Rossi, thank you for being on the Armchair MBA.
Great to be with you again, Tom.
Well, what really sucks is I know Dr. Rossi for a while. And he was a regular guest on New Theory. And unfortunately, we did a show a long while back when the Florida shooting happened. And unfortunately, we kind of have to do this again. So I really wish we were talking about some more positive stuff. But with that said, we'll jump right in. Hey, Orazio, how are you? Gianni, how are you? Cindy, welcome. So we're going to jump right in. Salvador Ramos obviously had some issues to cause something like this. We all have like our days. We all have stuff going on. We even dream sometimes. You have these flashes of like really doing bad things, but we normally don't do them. What has to happen? And give us the context and background. And I know you didn't treat him personally, but in general, what has to happen to go from being an 18-year-old kid, maybe even troubled, to doing something so horrific?
Well, Tom, that's a big question, but it's also a really good one. At this point in time, we know the profile of the shooters, all the shooters, basically, without exception, pretty much.
Okay.
We know that they're younger, they're 18, they're in their maybe early 20s. These are people who are looking at society from the outside in. They don't really have a good feel for socializing. They have a lot of anger. As psychologists say, there's a lot of retained anger. The retained anger over time generates into a rage. The rage then, you see it strike out in a matter of actually killing people. But the profile is there. These kids are somewhat withdrawn. They're frustrated with society. They're frustrated with their relationships. They're with multiple mental health issues, and you could look at all of the shooters and they've had some history or a big history of mental health problems. And in this case, since we're talking about Texas today, I just heard that he had issues with animals. He actually killed animals, apparently, and he was a dangerous person, scarring himself, difficult interactions with others. I'm sure as time goes on, we'll find more and more mental health issues with this shooter, just like we did with Newtown and just like we have with all the other shooters. So the profile's there. We know a lot about what happens. From my point of view as a clinical psychologist and a political one, I see us as a country with a major failure here. And by the way, as I said to you before, Tom, I'm a Second Amendment person.
Yeah, you have guns.
Shooter with my father and my uncle. I love to shoot guns, and I was actually in competition with archery. So I certainly understand the Second Amendment. But the question is, to your question, do we want people who have serious retained anger, mental health issues, multiple problems to simply go out and buy a gun?
Okay, I want to get to that because that's an important discussion, and I think what happens here is, respectfully for all parties, is it's a cycle. Happens, shock, prayers and thoughts, then political divide, wash, rinse, and repeat, right? So I
Right.
want to try to deep dive a little bit, and I want to unpack this a little bit more. So the mental health issues of this said 18-year-old, again, we don't know him specifically, but an entomology or the profile that we have for them. Is this stuff that's like chemical? Is this kind of like a chemical thing, and needs to be on meds? It needs to be like psychiatric, and then maybe could stabilize, or is this external where maybe got bullied and some really bad things happen, and it kind of like forced them into mental illness? What's typically the root cause of the mental illness? Physiologically, external, both? I want to get a greater appreciation for that, Doc.
Well, mostly, from my point of view, it's as you use the term, external or environmental factors. If you look
Yeah.
at these kids, all the shooters, they've grown up over time. Maybe they've been bullied. Maybe they've just been withdrawn. They haven't socialized. They develop anger. I mean, they're not born with this anger and rage to kill somebody,
Correct.
for the most part. I mean, there are certain chemical imbalances. I mean, there are certain people who are born that might be more hyperactive. They may have some issues in terms of their cognitive abilities. That could be a factor, of course. But by and large, if you look at the profile of the shooters, you will find that there have been years of possible abuse at home, conflict at home, broken marriages, family problems, a history of mental illness in the family, alcohol and drug abuse. So to your point on external, yes, mostly external factors. People grow into this anger and rage, and that's what we're seeing.
Okay, yeah, because what I do is I think most people do is they project or they absorb what's happening and they put it into their own lives, right? And so for me, I'm like, oh my God, am I being the best parent I can? Am I fostering ideas and thoughts, and am I picking up on are they getting bullied at school? And I kind of get worried about that, which sorry, my allergies, which I think is an appropriate response, right?
Right.
However, what you're saying is it may be the environment and the parents may be causing some of the mental health issues. Is that a fair assessment?
Of course, and not only causing it, but it could be other factors as well. Poor interaction with their friends. As you said before, there could be bullying. There could be drug and alcohol abuse at home or with the shooter himself. The environmental impact is not necessarily just with parents or relatives. That's a factor, but there are other societal factors that you could look at with almost all of these shooters, and you see how they develop this retained anger and then how they strike out. So we know a lot now. I mean, we certainly do know a lot about, again, the profile and the behavior pattern.
Okay, so we both come from Italian American background, as do many of the viewers. We're kind of taught to mind our own business, stay out of our neighbor's backyard, let them do their thing, not our business, look the other way, look the other way. I kind of subscribe to that. Unfortunately, it's like, I'll take care of my house, you take care of yours. But what do we do now, like considering the way we're brought up? But if we see something askew, we see something not right, we see something troubling, should we kind of go against how we're raised and maybe call a DIFUS or a CPS, or what should we do? Because I have no problem going against that proclivity, if you will, if it means saving a room full of kids. So walk us through kind of like culturally, like guys like us How do we reconcile this, and what do we look out for?
Well, I think to your point, everything's a matter of degrees. I happen to agree with you. I mean, I think most people should kind of mind their own business
Yeah.
and really let people live their own lives. I mean, you don't want to interfere on your neighbor and be overly nasty or bizarre in your own because of what you think. I mean, no, I think you're right. You grow up and you really want to respect other people, their rights to their own freedom, their own ability to lead their own lives. That's what America's all about. But it's a matter of degrees. When you see someone living next to you who is potentially dangerous, and then you become curious and you find out that the person is even extremely dangerous and volatile. What we need to move away from what you just said in terms of how we were brought up, and we need to move into another zone, which is, what are we going to do? How do we protect ourselves? And how do we actually look at the First Amendment, not the Second Amendment, the right to live and prosper? We need to be able to protect ourselves, and we need to be in a society where we're all in it together. But at the same time, you're right. We also need to mind our own business when we should, but certainly not when it comes to severe mental health problems. And we know that somebody's out there.
All right. So let's spend a second on that. What do we look out for? Because again, I don't want to be calling DIFUS or CPS on every single emo kid I see. For some people, it's an aesthetic, right? Or dark or withdrawn. But what's kind of like, they went to Hot Topic and bought some shirts. And what's, hey Tom, hey Doc, I saw this. Hang up the phone and call 911. Give us some of those stark differences, behavior or examples, or what are your thoughts as an expert?
Well, to your question, we don't want to just put every other person in handcuffs because, we don't like the way they look or to maybe have said a lot of bad things. That's not going to happen. And we're certainly not going there. But again, a matter of degrees. If someone has restraining orders against them, if someone has been charged with and in addition to that, charged with domestic violence, or we have kids that are openly withdrawn and angry and bitter and behaving in a bizarre way, like in this case, scarring themselves or killing animals and taking pleasure at killing dogs and cats and other animals, and all of these types of behaviors that are extreme, then we should have some kind of a system in place, and we do not, where we can monitor these people. We don't have to lock them up on the first day, but we ought to at least be able to look at people and monitor some people who have problems. And this is even before we get into a discussion of whether they should be able to buy a gun.
Okay.
This is for their own protection as well as our protection. We should be able to take a look at people who are potentially dangerous and problematic, and have some action plan for this.
Okay, I want to get to that. Okay, so let's talk about it. You and I are both, regardless of our other political views, it's fair to say you and I are both Second Amendment guys. We believe in the amendment. In concept, we defend the amendment. We'll break down maybe our levels of support, but essentially it's fair to say you and I are Second Amendment guys. Is that a fair statement?
It's a very fair statement, but as you make that statement, I'm thinking, I don't know of any, and and I know a lot of politicians, state people, national people, been on air with many. I don't know anyone who would say or believe that we should eliminate the Second Amendment.
Correct.
But I think your point is a better one when you said it's a matter of degrees. I mean, no law, some laws. What would work, what wouldn't work. That's where we get into a discussion.
Correct. And I want to talk about this specific example. So Texas obviously is a very pro Second Amendment state. Has ironically has more liberal rules and laws in terms of obtaining firearms, securing firearms. Salvador got these legally. Got the AR-15 legally in Texas. So let's kind of follow this through, right? So it's first he's 18 years old and had some challenges, but we obviously find out about them now because they manifested. Was able to buy a gun legally, right? So I don't know that. I don't know if you do or anybody could comment below. I don't know what the Texas laws are, but nevertheless, he got it, right? So is it the Second Amendment is okay, but it's the process that is broken? Meaning, did he just apply and there was no issues, and maybe got a letter from the grandma and it was okay? Like, do we need more scrutiny? Where was the failure there? Because that's obviously an issue. One is not picking up on his mental illness, right? And then number two is him being able to buy a gun pretty easily. So walk us through those machinations a little bit.
This is really an important question because, from my point of view, you ought to be checked out. I think you're right. He's 18 years old. I think it was on his birthday, actually. He went in and he bought these guns legally, quote unquote, legally. But should it have been legal? Like you said, the process is broken. I mean, if someone wants to buy a weapon, shouldn't we do a background check? Shouldn't we see if this person is mentally deranged or not? Shouldn't we have some process, as you say, in place so that we can monitor these people, and we should take a look at who is buying a gun? That's not an infringement on the Second Amendment to have a law that says anybody who wants to get a gun needs to be reviewed. Let's take a couple examples here. Not only with this shooter, but other shooters or would-be shooters. You can get a DWI. You can get another one. You can get a third one. You could actually lose your driver's license.
Correct.
But not your right to buy a gun. You could be a flat-out drunk. But in our country, in most states, you will not lose your right to get a gun, even if you're drunk on the road, again and again, unless, of course, you have an accident where you kill somebody or you're criminally charged. So we have it. I like what you said about the process being broken. It's broken. I don't want anybody's right to be taken away from them, but I think people should be scrutinized before they get a gun, and reasonably so. By the way, you can get a gun. You can get rifles. You can get shotguns. You can buy almost anything you want in Great Britain. They had one mass shooting last year, and 5 people were killed. The previous mass shooting was in 2010. As you said, something's broken here. And we need to protect the Second Amendment so people can certainly enjoy the firearms. But we do not have anything in place to prevent people who are dangerous, mentally ill, and a threat to our kids.
Yeah, but Doc, the only thing is I try to be as open-minded and fair balance, which I do agree maybe the UK may have had some installation or process made that adjusted and assisted with, squelching the school shooting. But I do think it's a little unfair to just say, hey, stricter gun laws did it. There had to be an overall overhaul, or the mental health system is better, or better recognition. So like what I'm getting at is, hey, Nunzio, I really believe if we address the causation, a lot of it will be better. And now again, we will graduate more on the controls and the Second Amendment, but is there anything that maybe the UK or other countries are doing better in addressing mental health issues or culturally for our youth?
Well, just to address your comment on like it's not only the UK, it's other countries as well. What they do is they look at the application. You need to get a license. They actually, if you apply to get a gun, you can buy what you want. You could buy rifles and shotguns again, but you can buy what you want. You need to get a license. They actually come out and visit you. They interview you in Great Britain and other countries. They check you out and make sure that you are a responsible citizen, that you're not shooting dogs and cats, that you're not beating up kids, that you don't have restraining orders against you. They check that out before you're able to get a gun. And that would eliminate, in this country, for example, a lot of people who buy guns who shouldn't be buying guns. Is it perfect? No. Now, the second part of your question is what else could be done? Well, we certainly need to change mental health in America. And you and I have had
Yeah.
this conversation before. We've had some really
Thank God.
dynamic conversations where
Yes.
if you look at the states, I mean, look at Texas. Look at Texas. They're like, I don't know, they're next to last or close to last in mental health. They say that this is a result of mental health, but when it comes to mental health, it certainly isn't a priority. And that's not just to pick on Texas. In this country, we have mental health backwards. And we need to have not a change in how we look at mental health, but we need a dynamic, complete change on mental health. From my point of view, when the president has a cabinet, there should be a cabinet position for mental health. It should be integrated into overall health care, but that's not even enough. We need to have mental health prioritized. So hopefully we can identify more people with mental health problems, certainly identify more shooters, have laws on the book so that we can at least interact with the authorities, not arrest every other person, but at least interact so that we could identify some of these people who need help and are certainly not getting it.
Okay. Now, I saw on YouTube, it was an ATF agent. He was being a little snarky with a local cop, and it was a little slippery slope. He identified himself, but like didn't adequately. The local cop is like, get on your knees, and he wouldn't. And it was like a little bit of issue jurisdiction. If it's a local matter, it's a local jurisdiction, but if it's a federal matter, it's ATF. So basically what happened was, and I guess if I go to buy a firearm, Jersey's a little stricter, but let's pick another state. Let's pick Texas or something, right? My understanding is when you go to buy purchase a gun, even where you get review, the local shop owner, wherever you purchase it, will contact the local police station. They will run a check, right? Now, even if 2022, you would think it'd be all digitally and on point. You could still get approved, right? But then what happens is it gets kicked up to the ATF. And the ATF, because of COVID, has like a year backlog. So it's actually very common now, very common, for the ATF to come back a year later, knock on your door, and say, hey, Bart, hey, Tom, you got approved for your guns. We saw something we're not comfortable with. Give us those guns back. And the ATF will collect those guns back, right? So I'm just wondering why isn't there in 2022 a way, whether it be local law enforcement, national, etc., where I look something up and it's so sensitive that there is an issue, it doesn't get picked up right there. That befuddles me. That seems to be like a process breakdown.
I think your point is really a good one, because I take it as the starting point that you're talking about now. Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. In this digital age, let's say that Tom LaVecchia has got 3 DWIs. He's got 2 restraining orders against him. He's got he had charges of domestic abuse. And by the way, what I'm saying, I'm recalling a real case. Okay.
Yeah.
And also there's a history of alcohol abuse, and so you go in and you want to buy a semi-automatic assault weapon. So someone should be able to quickly take a look at some kind of background information here, but we don't have that. That's broken, and I think to your point, there are states, and Texas is going to be one of them. Florida, they're trying to push it the same thing, where it's you can buy a gun when you're 18 years old without any license or review. It's your freedom to buy a weapon, no matter who you are, without any background checks, and carry it openly without any check. And that's actually where the movement has been going, for people to have the freedom to buy, no check, and carry. To me, that's just insanity, and that's even more mentally ill than the shooters, perhaps, if that's possible, because you're basically saying in a country where we have 330 million people, well, if those few million people who have serious anger and mental health problems, oh, they can just go out and buy a gun anytime they want and carry it. I mean, what
Yeah.
are we? I mean, to your point about digital, we're not even at that point of digital accuracy. We're in a different zone in terms of our thinking here, and I think that's what's getting a lot of people so angry. But as you say, when this will pass, then they'll try to move on to the next issue and make the next issue something else.
Well, hold on. I want to do this progression, if you will, or digression, rather. Okay, so you know what? Salvador has some issues. He's 18 years old. He's able to have enough money for the gun. He's able to get the obtain the gun legally. Shoots his grandmother. Makes his way to the school. Right. I still don't understand the engagement with the local officer. We'll get that in a second. But should we almost resign ourselves a little bit? Should all schools maybe have 2 armed local policemen and make it part of the detail where they're stationed there, just like a school nurse, have 2 school officers? Should we do almost like, I don't say give up, it's not the right word, but as a precaution, should we do that in all of our schools? Although it'd be very expensive, I think the expense outweighs the cost. What do you think there?
Well, I'm kind of with you on this as well. I mean, suppose someone just wants to walk into the school. I mean, just walk in and cause trouble, let alone the shooter. I mean, we should have security, and we don't want to have armed camps. But to your point about having some security people, maybe having proper fencing, we don't want to have people go into a school who don't belong in the school. I definitely agree with that. But I think your point is bigger. What do you do about churches then? What do you do about the mall? What do you do about busy restaurants? I mean, where's the security? Are we going to be a security nation where we have an armed camp around, Joe's Stone Crab in Miami because they serve 2,000 people a night for dinner? I mean, how does that work? I mean, certainly in schools, I'm with you in schools because, we're all hypersensitive about our kids, but it just seems to me that.
Well, no, the reason why it would make sense for a school is depending on the state, but typically a school is run by the local municipality,
Right.
Which, you have your local budgets and your taxes. Trust me, I pay well over 20 grand a year in taxes. I don't want to pay
Right.
more, but if they got to throw a few cops in there and it raises a few $100 per year, I'm in on that. So I don't know what happened there. It just seems something that should really be looked at.
Yes, I agree.
They just engage. The guy engaged. What do you mean engaged? The guy had an AR, like he had an AR. First, we had an AR-15, which is a bigger rifle. And if he, and I understand, like he crashed into the thing and like walked in, like so one. If they had a cop there engaging them, that cop is poorly trained. The other issue is, and I think this is important, right? And again, I don't want to resign ourselves and be Monday morning or armchair quarterback, but it took 40 minutes of response for a tactical team to go in. Remember, this guy's an 18-year-old kid. He's not an expert. Granted, his bullet can kill you, like nevertheless, but police and tactical teams should have training. Why was there such a long response here?
I think your point is a good one when it comes to security overall. Especially in this case, when it comes to schools, and maybe more sophisticated security at certain events, whether it's a big church gathering or something. We need that. And we need it not only because of what we said before, the profile of the shooter, but suppose you have somebody who's just mentally ill and wants to walk in with a bomb and blow up a church or something. I mean, we do in this day and age need the most sophisticated security measures. We have camera stuff, we have digital info, as you say. Maybe there's more that we can do to be sure that there's maybe a camera perimeter or something so that we can do more to protect ourselves. But as you bring up this question about security, it also begs the question of what are we doing to prevent people from getting these guns who you and I do not want to have guns in their hands because they want to go kill kids. I mean, that's just where we are. And again, laws that are really meaningful, not just maybe a superficial law that's passed because politicians want to make some hay here, but really good background checks for people. You want to get a gun, you should have the right to get a gun, but damn it, you ought to be checked out. You ought to be checked out today in our society with suicide climbing, with anger management issues everywhere, teenagers with multiple problems. And then when they become 18, they just walk out and get a gun? Doesn't make sense to me.
What about the NRA? The NRA has been obviously a staunch proponent of the Second Amendment. That's what they're there for. Are they becoming a little bit more flexible, like on maybe certain types or backgrounds, or politically, are you a little underwhelmed? Like I look at it this way, right? The NRA has their stance, and I respect it. I'm not an NRA member, but again, like I don't. Anybody knows me. I'm a free market guy. I'm a free capital guy. I don't want the government involving. I don't want the government being in business of anything other than maybe collecting some taxes, infrastructure, that kind of stuff, right? Federal bank, maybe, right? But I just think it's a slippery slope, and I respect NRA's position in many ways, right? But is the NRA being a little bit more flexible than they have been in the past during some governance, or do you see them being inflexible from your opinion?
Well, let me answer that question by saying the NRA certainly has every right to try to protect the Second Amendment. They have training programs for people to so they can shoot, enjoy target practice. They have different programs so that you could enjoy a weapon, and you have so many people who legally do so, and they're responsible citizens. That's all fine. But where the NRA is a complete and total failure is the fact that they don't understand that legal action does not mean you're taking away the Second Amendment. The NRA's position has been any law, anything to do with gun control is an infringement on a person's right. That's ridiculous. I mean, do you want the guy next to you to be able to buy a bazooka in his house? Do you want the guy next to you, Tom, to be that guy, a real person that I'm thinking about, who had the 4 DWIs, was burning animals in the backyard, had domestic violence charges, and you saw drunk during the day? Do you want that person to be able to buy a semi-automatic assault weapon and live next to you? I don't think so. So any law that is proposed, the NRA says that's an infringement on the Second Amendment. That's where they've got it wrong. The NRA could be a hero. They could support the Second Amendment. They could talk about proper training. They could do all kinds of stuff, but it's a complete and total failure to me because they don't recognize that we need responsible gun legislation. Emphasis on responsible.
No, which I don't disagree with what you're saying. And Marco brings a good point as we're doing this live. Hey, Tom, can you respectfully tell him if we shouldn't be putting guns in men at 18 years old, what's the difference by putting guns in their hands of 18-year-old men that go fight in the army? What are your thoughts on that, Doc?
Well, a lot of thoughts. If someone joins the military, they go through training, they go through scrutiny. They are looked at from top to bottom, day in, day out, with supervisors and people in place. The military is not a place where they're unfamiliar with mental health issues. There are people that go into the service and they have problems, and the military tries to work with them. Sometimes they're discharged, but there's a big difference. When you go into the military, you're reviewed, you're personally screened, you're looked at every day, every moment. This is an 18-year-old going into a store and buying a gun. A completely different scenario. Completely different.
Hey, babe. Well, so sorry, I got the little one coming in. Thanks, babe. My little one likes to turn off the podcast midstream. I don't want her on camera. So with that said, Forgive me, I got a little one here. The hazards of doing a live. With that said, she loves it. With that said, though, we have a process in place, right, which is a federal process. So what you're saying essentially is we have a process in place to check these guys out, but it's either minimal or that process is broken. Is that am I filtering that correctly?
Well, there, where this has gone is that the states can make their own rules when it comes to guns. And okay, whether you agree with that or not, but the point is that I like what you said about things being broken.
Yeah.
I mean, you have states where you can just walk in and get a gun. You don't need to be scrutinized at all. That's just, again, we said this before. That's insanity to me. But they also have some kind of background check in some states that's really more like a whitewash. It's not a full background check. If they checked out Tom LaVecchia or Bart Rossi, and they may not really find out that we had DWIs, that we had domestic violence. They may not. It's superficial. That's no good either. That's broken. We need real meat and potatoes here. Some real strong legal action.
So like what, Doc? I'm with you on that. Like what, for instance?
How about legislation that says very simply, you want to buy a gun, you need to go through a process, and a process, as using your words, that's not broken.
Yeah.
You apply, and they look at your background, and you get a license to own a gun or guns.
But is it, Doc, is it fair, though, in this case with Salvador Ramos, he may have had a whole host of psychological issues, right? But by turning 18 or being 18 years old, he's of legal age, but may not have the heritage of it manifesting. And it's almost like, well, do we have a cutoff? You know what I mean? Like,
no. That's a good point you're making about this 18-year-old.
Yeah.
This particular shooter, like the others, in almost all of these cases, if we had a pretty good background check and we had people go out and actually meet the person who's trying to buy a gun, you would find out that these people are dangerous. Most of these shooters, including this 18-year-old, you would find out that he's making scars on his butt. You'd find out that they found out now that apparently he killed cats and he threw cats out at people. You find out all kinds of things about someone's behavior if you really look at it. And you find out that there's a DWI and there's domestic violence and there's a restraining order against this 19-year-old. Well, these background checks would make a significant difference and not infringe on anybody's right to get a gun. And by the way, what I'm saying, to me, helps the law-abiding gun person. If you're a law-abiding person and you enjoy guns, don't you want other people to be law-abiding as well? Do you really want mental health problems owning guns? It doesn't compute.
Okay, what about giving $40 billion to Ukraine and not much for increased school security? Are we misallocating resources?
Another interesting and really good question. I would answer that by saying, let's go back from one administration to the other for decades. Where's the money for mental health? Where's the money for mental health so we can identify some of these people and some of these people can get health care? Where's the money for that? Where's the money for a lot of things? You're right about the money going to Ukraine. I mean, we're saying it's necessary because democracy itself is being threatened. I mean, like where's the next country that he's going to attack? What's this? What's that? But it's a good point. What are our priorities? I mean, we have states that are almost last in mental health, saying that these shooters and all these issues they're mental health problems, but they don't do anything for mental health. They don't appropriate any money. They actually cut mental health. I mean, it's just like, it's so insane. And anybody who says this is a mental health problem with these shooters, that is correct. Make no bones about it. That is not a misstatement. But where it goes off the rails is when they say it's a mental health problem and they stop there. Well, where's the legislation? Where's the gun control legislation to prevent these mentally ill people from getting the guns? That's an infringement.
Got it.
That's
So
it's
fair to say it's fair to say that at the end of the day, there needs to be a better process to obtain the guns,
right.
With the huge caveat of not infringing on yours and mine well coveted the Second Amendment rights. All right.
Let me comment to that point, because I think you're right. I want to go out and buy some guns now. Okay. Yeah. I'm a person. Why should I worry about people screening me? I fill out an application. Someone's going to come to my home and they're going to interview me. They're going to talk to me. I tell them who I am, and they take a look. They check my background out. They see that I haven't had any DWIs. I don't have any restraining orders. They check me out, and then I get a license and I can buy the guns that I want to buy. What's wrong with that?
Well, okay, so you are a political psychologist, so you're that rare person who understands the why behind it, but also the political. I want you to wear the NRA's hat right now, because they obviously have their stance. What is their current stance, in your opinion?
Well, their stance is backwards.
No. I want to give your opinion, but I want you to state it as if you're them. They wouldn't say our opinion is backwards.
No. Okay, what they're saying, yeah, good point. What they're saying is that when you get into gun control, you're getting into the infringement of the Second Amendment, and you're infringing on the person's right to get the weapon. And I say, it's my opinion, that's not the right approach, and I think they're actually hurting themselves with this view. I think that they should be all for.
Why with all in life, let's be honest, me navigating a 2-year-old to me dealing with my 3 o'clock business deal that I'm going to be involved with, everything requires a negotiation, right? And I do want to share this, right? Because I grew up a registered Democrat. I consider myself more center. I'm socially liberal, but fiscally conservative. I'm finding myself more libertarian. I might just grow out my beard and go live in the woods somewhere, and live off of Bitcoin. But that's another discussion. And we talk about the Overton window where it kind of moved, where like me, the 18-year-old Democrat, is now a Republican, right? And we could push and pull on the machinations as to why, right? But I do want to say this though. Maybe there needs to be flexibility on the right or the NRA to say, okay, hey, you know what? Here's what's acceptable. Here's what we're willing to give up and recommend in order to have safer guidelines, right? But then the left lately has been overreaching, and vis-a-vis shutdowns and other stuff, and I don't trust the government, man. I don't,
Well, I wouldn't link the shutdowns to gun control. Shutdowns, that's a debate.
No, but in terms of in terms of governmental overreach.
Well, governmental overreach. What about voter suppression laws that have been passed? That's government in action preventing people from voting. That's right wing. That's not left wing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of government. There's a lot.
We're going to have our own separate political show, and we're just going to be like, no holds barred.
So to your point, there's a lot of government issues. We know that there's government issues when it comes to security, when it comes to military, money. There's a lot of issues. But when it comes to gun control, let's make no mistake about it. We have mentally ill people out there, people who have anger management problems. We need real gun control to prevent people from getting weapons who you and I do not want them to have weapons.
No, which I agree. And if you're a gun-toting citizen who's doing it the right way, you want your fellow patriots to do that. And I will interject with maybe there needs to be a little bit of flexibility on the NRA stance and position. I do agree that, but I just don't. I don't trust. And again, like liberal. I'll take a liberal over a leftist. You know what I mean? Like, so I I don't know. I'm just so not
Well,
trusting of the
I think
government.
that's I think that notion though is just not, it's not fit for this subject of guns. Whether someone is too progressive or for whatever reasons, that's one thing. But when it comes to this, we need safety and laws that make sense. And
Correct.
we know that the profile of the shooters, and we should do something about that. And I don't think it's a little bit of give and take on the NRA side. They should come out and give a lot on this one, so that there's real legislation, so that people who are responsible can get their guns and enjoy guns and shooting, but they're the ones who should have the guns, not people who are problematic.
Okay, now let's. All right, because I saw this like little social media thing, and it was kind of this circle of control. What could you control? Your actions, how you react to things, your belief system, blah blah blah, and then what you can control, external factors, and there's a million external things. The whole goal idea was a little post was to have you show and focus on the things you can control, right? Because so if you could focus on the things in your sphere of control, and you do control it to where you want to, it'll be much easier and happier to deal with the external things. Okay, so let's unpack for a second on what are some of the things that we can do. We can do. Bart Rossi, Tom LaVecchia, Carlos Muniz, Nunzio, like give us like I'm 3 years old. 1, 2, 3, 4. What are some of the things that we can do, even if it's a little bit, to help this from preventing from happening again, Doc?
Well, I think that we should all become more aware of mental health issues. We should be more engaged. We shouldn't just say, "Oh yeah, Dr. Rossi's right. We should do that." No, that's not enough. What are you doing? What are you doing to engage? Are you asking the local school officials to have some mental health training in the middle schools and high school? We don't have that. We teach kids math, and we teach them reading skills, but a lot of them are suicidal.
Yeah.
It's just backwards to me. So to your question, I think we should be more proactive in terms of how we want to frame mental health in this country. And then also, by the way, I think we'll become more aware of these potential shooters. Maybe they could be identified by more people, and that's a byproduct.
You're given a lot of the macro, and unless like I'm like the local superintendent or the policymaker, and I like the macro. And I like that you offered that, but I want to go even deeper and unpack this even deeper on the micro. Should we maybe volunteer at a school? Should we maybe write into our legislators in our opinion? Should we? I don't know. What is a starting point today, individually, that we can do to at least help?
Very good point. I think that what you could do is to have part of your life engaged in this, and what you think would make it a better society. What can you do? And I think you're right to maybe work with legislators, put in some time, on how you would like to see things. Maybe be active so that there can be more mental health program. What could you do to join a group that's more of an advocacy for something like that? What organization can you join that would be more in tune with views that make sense in terms of this kind of violence? How do we prevent it? What kind of laws again would make sense? How do you engage your legislative person, whether they're on the left or the right? What makes sense? And that kind of stuff I think is needed. And the bottom line here is, and I'll take a conservative position on this one, is that who are you voting for? And if you're going to vote for people who want to have open carry and no restrictions on anyone buying a gun, that person's running for office, and you vote for that person, then that's what you're going to get. So I think who we vote for and what state passes what legislation, that's all part of specifically where you are.
I want to throw a little loop out there because although I am a free market person and let people do their thing, there are tools like AI, artificial intelligence, and so forth that can maybe increase or look into the increased perspective of hot zones or areas based off of inputs and data to has a greater chance of having a school shooting. Should we use those tools and then maybe fortify those locations? But that might work. But again, is that infringing on our civil liberties? What do you think about that?
Well, I like the word you use when it comes to tools. For
Yeah.
example, let me bring out the psychology here. Any young person or adult who likes to kill animals, I'm not talking about hunting here. I'm talking about likes to torture and kill animals. The correlation is extremely high
Extremely high,
with
right?
violence.
Yeah.
Actually, domestic violence charges. People may think, well, this guy had problems at home, but domestic violence charges over time correlate very highly with people acting out. Either
Oh
they
wow.
get into fights, they get into all kinds of altercations, um, restraining orders. I mean, sometimes people, someone gets a restraining order that they don't really deserve for whatever reason, but by
Yeah.
and large, when someone has a restraining order against them, a lot of times there's reasons for that. The person has anger management problems. So to your point, when it comes to tools, I like that you brought it up. We have a lot of tools. This kid, this shooter, had a lot of these problems. He was injuring himself, scars on his body. He was interacting with other people in a very nasty, abrasive manner. There's a lot of things that we could use as here in terms of tools that make sense.
One of the viewers. I wonder what Dr. Bart thinks of obsessions with My Little Pony. I've actually heard that they looked at a few different situations and they were like happen to be obsessed with like the My Little Pony toy. I
You
actually
mean
heard.
you, you mean like the video stuff that
Yeah,
watching
like
stuff?
the little like. I hope you're not roasting me to the truth, but I didn't hear My Little Pony. I heard like they generally congregate to certain type of toys and content,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I think I'm getting roasted here,
Well,
but
no, I think some of these points are kind of interesting to me because they found out that people who look at violent video games, I mean, that might be the better, or how people are influenced by, like you said before, external factors. But let's take videos or games, um, violent games.
yeah.
The people who watch these videos and stuff and then they become violent are people who are usually prone to violence before they were watching the video games. The video games themselves don't make them more violent, but people who tend to be more violent uh, watch them.
Got
And,
it.
and and if you took 100 people who are basically non-violent people and you had them watch violent video games, it wouldn't change their demeanor or their behavior. Studies
Yeah, that
have
was
shown.
kind of like remember like, and I always thought there was a racist overtone. They felt like rap music may have influenced certain violence in certain communities, which I felt was racist, to be honest with you. But
Yeah,
with that, I agree with you. I don't believe the causation
no.
is GTA or one of
I mean,
the
yeah, and by the
games.
way, it's not that I'm through. I wouldn't want my kids to be watching these super nasty, terrible, horrific videos. I mean, I don't think that's so great, but I don't think it's going to make someone violent by watching them. More than likely, those people who become violent were angry before they even started watching the videos.
True. So I just want to take a moment before we wrap up. I'm just going to read the names if I can. I think I have them here. Um, just one second. Do I still have them? So unfortunately, oh man, Alethea Ramirez. I believe she was 10. Angel cousins Jackie Cazares and Annabelle Rodriguez, both 10. Beautiful. Rest in peace. Ava Morales. She was a teacher who was there. Uzia Garcia, 8 years old. Little King, Xavier Lopez, 10. Mary Joe Garza, 10. Irma Garcia. Let me share this so you guys can see the faces. She was a teacher as well. Alexandria Lexi Rubio, Tess Maria Mata, Madi Rodriguez, Neve Bravo, Ellie Lugo, Rogelio Torres, Jose Flores, Elia Cruz Torres, cousins Jace Carmelo Lovatos, July Nicole Celerio, Bolton, McKenna Lee Outrod, Layla Salazar, Miranda Mathis, who those are the faces and the names behind it. So, well, Doc, listen, we're gonna keep on the storyline. We'll probably huddle up again. I know we have some dynamic conversations sometimes, but we all have the same intent, which is to make this country great and to make sure our kids are safe. Can you you can give the final thoughts for today?
Well, first off, I think your questions were great. I think you're right on the ball in terms of what you presented, and it gives me an opportunity to be someone who is sensitive to the Second Amendment, but also someone who's sensitive to what needs to be done. And serious stuff needs to be done, not just some little legislation that's kind of a half-ass compromise. We don't need that. We need some real stuff, some real change. And we need a change when it comes to the legal action. And we need a change, certainly, when it comes to mental health in America. And we don't need to talk about it anymore. We just need to do it.
Agreed. Thanks all for being on. Kind of a last minute thing to go live. We were going to do a pre-record. We appreciate all your contributions. We don't always agree on the how, but again, I think we agree on the what. Dr. Bart Rossi, thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule for being on the Armchair Review. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.